Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go.
Hello, I'm the Reverend Dr. Jamie Mathias, pastor of Holy Family Catholic Church in Austin, Texas. Do you remember the 1994 Disney movie, The Lion King? It's the story of a young lion cub named Simba. Because Simba's father, Mufasa, is the king of Pride Rock, we presume that Simba too will one day be a king. The story takes a turn, though, when Mufasa is killed in a stampede, and Simba's evil uncle, Scar, plots the young lion cub's death. Fortunately, Simba's life is spared, but he ends up in the wilderness, where he meets two friends, Pumbaa and Timon, who attempt to convince him that a carefree life in the wilderness is really not so bad after all. Hakuna Matata, right? But then comes the turning point, the climax of the movie. Do you remember it? One night, Simba is walking alone by a pool of water when he hears the voice of his father coming from the heavens saying, "Simba, remember who you are." At that moment, Simba looks down into the pool of water, and what does he see? His own reflection as the Lion King. And in that moment, he remembers who he is and who he's called to be. Remember who you are. That's the message of today's readings on this Holy Thursday, as we remember Jesus' last night on this earth. In our first reading from the book of Exodus, we find God telling Moses and Aaron how the Israelites are to eat their last meal before their midnight escape from slavery in Egypt. Each family was to roast the lamb and eat it with unleavened bread. And did you hear how they ate it? With their coats on, with sandals on their feet, and with their walking sticks in their hands. Why? Because they were in a hurry. They were getting ready to go. They didn't even have time to wait for the yeast in their dough to rise. They had to eat unleavened bread. Every year since, our Jewish brothers and sisters have remembered that great event when God led them forth from slavery in Egypt. They call it their Passover Meal because the angel of death passed over all the homes where the blood of the lamb was prominently displayed on the doorposts. And in today's first reading, God tells Moses and Aaron that the Israelites must yearly celebrate this day in order to remember who they are and whose they are. Our first reading today concludes with God saying, "This day shall be a memorial feast for you, which all your generations shall celebrate with pilgrimage to the Lord as a perpetual institution." Remember who you are. That was God's instruction to the Israelites. And every year since, our Jewish brothers and sisters have celebrated Passover as a way of remembering who they are. Remember who you are. That's the message that St. Paul shares in our second reading today, as he invites his friends in Corinth to remember Jesus' last night on earth. Jesus, the Lamb of God and the Lion of Judah, went up to Jerusalem on a pilgrimage, and he was there to celebrate the Passover meal with all of his Jewish brothers and sisters. He was remembering who he was. But then the meal took a turn. He took a loaf of bread and said, "This is my body." And then he took a cup of wine and said, "This is my blood." And after that, what did he say? "Do this in remembrance of me." Every time you do this, he said, remember me. To this day, we continue to share a loaf of bread and a cup of wine in his memory, remembering the events of that night, remembering Jesus and all he did for us, remembering ultimately who we are. That meal that Jesus had with his friends, we now know it as the Last Supper. We've all seen paintings and images of it, right? It was Jesus' last night on earth. And he was sitting down to dinner with his friends. And what did he want them to remember that night? We find the answer in today's gospel. Before dinner, Jesus took off his outer cloak. He tied a towel around his waist. And he did what? He stooped down to wash his disciples' feet. This symbol of washing someone else's feet has largely lost its meaning in this day and age when we can easily jump into the shower or into a bathtub and wash our own feet. But think for a moment what it must have been like to live in Jesus' time. Did they have paved roads back then? No. Did the people wear shoes? No. So after a long day of walking the dusty roads and walkways, or after a day of working in the fields, what did their feet look like? They were dirty. They were absolutely filthy. And what did they smell like? Exactly. So when you came home at night for dinner, who would wash your feet? Your slave or your servant would. That was his or her job. And it was a humbling task. Which is why Jesus' action in today's gospel is so radical. He is the teacher, the master in the room. Others should be rushing to wash his feet. Instead, he is washing the feet of his friends. That's what he wants us to remember. Remember who you are. You're not here on earth to be served. You're here to serve. Jesus tells us quite plainly, I have given you a model to follow, so that as I have done for you, you also should do. He washed others' feet. He served others. We need to find ways to wash the feet of others. We need to find ways to serve those around us. Remember who you are. Yes, in The Lion King, there's a real turning point when Simba remembers who he is. Throughout the centuries, our Jewish and Christian brothers and sisters have gathered to share meals and to remember who they are. And now it comes down to us. We are gathered here to share a meal and to remember who we are. Who are we? Are we here to serve or to be served? The answer in today's gospel is quite clear. We're here to serve. Brothers and sisters, let us set ourselves to the humbling task of washing others' feet, of serving others, because that's what Jesus wanted us to remember. Remember who you are.